What we have on the front page of the Standard, let me start by Esther Nyonje. Esther is a political analyst, and she's also quite passionate about governance as well. Welcome to the program, Esther.
Thank you so much,
As
Victor.
well as Christine Odera. She calls herself daughter of the land, and she'll tell me why she calls herself daughter of the land. Christine, karibu.
Asante.
And finally, she's not new to our screens. Nyange, karibu.
Asante sana.
You need to take up my job because you're a media practitioner.
Yes.
Karibu sana.
I've worked here before, you know?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So you want to shift seats?
Oh, well, I'm happy to be here.
Okay. Nonetheless, today is Ladies' Day. Welcome to the program, ladies, and I hope you're going to have a good discussion. Let's start with what's on the front page of the Daily Nation. Arrest me, Raila police lock horns. Let me start with you, Esther. I don't know what you make of this headline. Tension, tough talking, IG, Raila dares, the IG. What's your take on the front page of the Daily Nation? Go ahead.
The IG's comments on threatening Raila and looking forward to interrupt the demonstrations is not a good show. Is not a good show in respect to our constitution.
Yes.
Article 37 of our constitution gives the right of every citizen in Kenya to hold demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations, picket, and air the grievances in that way. So this tough talk from the IG to Raila Odinga is looking like a breach of the constitution, because at what capacity is he stopping Raila's rights to picket? Yes. And Raila does not seem like he is going in the way of unpeaceful demonstrations. His agenda is to give accountability to the government, because what channels, this is one of the channels he's using. So this tough talk is not coming out right.
So which means he's just exercising his constitutional right.
He is exercising his constitutional right. And it's also a way to follow up on the promises and deliverables that are to be delivered by Kenya Kwanza government. You can see the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister of UK, Liz Truss. She resigned because she could not lower the high taxes in the UK. She could not bring inflation down, and she was asked to resign, and she resigned. So maybe this is one of the ways Raila is using to give accountability from the government.
Christine, Article 37 has been mentioned quite several times, but the two gentlemen are now talking. Arrest me, do this, I will do that. What do you make of that?
I think we've been used to that. He knows what he's doing, and he has been accustomed to such threats. And so maybe we need to also start looking at the issues. Are we warning him against inciting people to go and picket and destroy property? Or what exactly are we warning him to? I think that should come clear, so that it's not a threat or an attack to a person, but issues that people are facing on the ground. I think we've seen a lot of women also join some of this demonstration, and I think for the first time we saw some very disturbing images of a woman in Kisumu, I think, on the streets, and really trying to let her voice be heard. And so I think this is a nation coming out to exercise its rightful duty. It's a people's rights approach. And Kenya, we've come a long way in the constitution to be here. And so citizens have been vocal, they are civically educated. So let's exercise our rights, but also be responsible to the fact that the issues that we are speaking of are actually issues that affect us on a day-to-day basis. But let's also not use this issue to cause more problems. Yes. Absolutely.
And Patience, just to also mention that Patience is Executive Director of Association of Media Women in Kenya, AMWIK. During your roundtable discussions as practitioners, and Article 37 also, you're right, so to speak, all of us, we have got that right, but there is a limitation, of course. And when you hear we've had this before. We've had protests in Kenya before. But the threats from the police to the opposition has been, do this, and I will do that. What do you make of this? A repeat of what happened in the past?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this morning. And as I said, I mean, the two ladies here have already alluded to the fact that it's really enshrined within our Constitution, Article 37. Every person has the right peacefully and unarmed to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to public authorities. So my understanding right now is the fact that the opposition, as it is, as MIO, is agitating on behalf of Kenyans. And as we do so, then the responsibility is, what is the conduct of the persons who are going out to demonstrate? You know, every right comes with responsibilities. So there are limits to how much we can do. There are limits to how, it's okay for you to protest, but protest unarmed, protest without destroying property for other people. So the thing is, everyone is feeling very tired this morning. You can imagine that people want to go to work. It's a Monday morning, but you know, you really don't know what happens. Should you drive? Should you not drive? Should you leave the house? Should you not leave the house? Those are questions that everyone is asking themselves. So for me, I think it's a good way to agitate. It's a good way to demonstrate. It's a good way to speak, and to speak on behalf of Kenyans, if really the intention is to speak on behalf of Kenyans. But then let our conduct determine how we do this, whether we, and I think the police also has a duty. So it means really everyone is doing their part, but then the part is, should we now flex our muscles and see who flexes more or who shouts more? So I think, well, we are watching as Kenyans, and we're hoping that at this particular time, we're all conscious of what is happening. We are conscious of the young people that we are thinking about, our women who suffer the most during such kind of demonstrations. And while properties get lost and people lose businesses, you know, so lives are really, I mean, people are really scared about their lives for the next how many days? Is it Monday and Thursday? How long will it last? So everyone is really concerned.
All right. Ladies, let's take a break. And we come back, we get into the real gist of the discussion. Today we want to talk about promises, politics, and deliverables. Promises, politics, and deliverables. Coming back shortly after this break. Stay with us. And welcome back. Okay, before we get into the discussion, let me take you on the front page of the Standard newspaper. Calls for sobriety and talks. Calls for sobriety and talks. Leaders are asking President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga to sit and come up with solutions to the problems and stop the grandstanding. Leaders are asking President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga to sit and come up with solutions to the problems and stop the grandstanding. We have got several leaders there. Quote verbatim, of course, moving forward. Inside exploits of Kilifi's man of God under probe over boy's death. You can take a look at that story. Raila dares police to arrest him today as Kindiki rules out protests. Raila dares police to arrest him today as Kindiki rules out protests. As the MIO leader says that police were given notice and they should not interfere with the protests. And on the other hand, Koome wants that the protests are illegal and anyone found with weapons will be arrested. And on this note, Koome said that weapons include things like slings, stones, rungus, the batons and what have you. For them, those are weapons. But there is now a call for leaders urging Ruto and Raila to give dialogue a chance. Again, coming back to you, Esther. Clerics, other NGOs, bodies calling for dialogue right now. Do you think this is going to be the way forward? According to your own understanding, do you think Raila is basically ready for another round of talks? Because this will actually culminate into another round of handshake.
There is no other way, Victor. You know, they say that when diplomacy fails, force must apply. And if force applies, then that means if there is no dialogue, what's the other option? It is war. And now we don't want to put our country in that state that we are going to war because of two people. But both sides are so agitated. One side is saying we don't want a handshake, we don't want dialogue, we don't want anything to do with this. And the other side also repeats the same. So you look at these two situations and you say, then what can be done? Because now, are we going to fight? And wars have been made, wars have been created because of such situations. We cannot underrate this situation. And when it happens when Raila joined government as Prime Minister, if he had not joined government as Prime Minister, you can imagine what could have happened, Victor. Because as much as people say that Uhuru was a weakling and Uhuru came up and said to join government with Raila because of his own interest, imagine the situation that would have happened if Uhuru had not joined hands with Raila. So my point is that at this point, the President, Ruto, is a symbol of national unity.
Yes.
And now what is he going to do? What steps are you going to take to curb this situation? Because this is one of his responsibilities. And the easiest way that we look at it is through dialogue. Now, are we going to call an outside body an arbitrator, or what do they want? So for me, the only way here is dialogue. And dialogue does not mean that you get half of the government. Let them sit down and decide what do you want and what do I want? How can we work together for the good of the country?
Christine, dialogue. And maybe we'll be back here once again and say, we talked about it on the 27th day of March. Are we likely to see another round of handshake?
Well, in my years of being in a conflict situation, and
yes,
especially just understanding how conflicts are then solved, you cannot force conflicting parties to go and discuss. The conflicting parties have to come to the table and want.
Willingly.
Yes, willingly to
yes,
decide. Because all these leaders who are pushing them to go and dialogue, they can also act as negotiators and negotiate on behalf of the parties that are conflicting. Because the two conflicting parties also need to decide on a mediator. So dialogue needs to also be really thought through. It's not a one-thing process that you just come to the table and you discuss and voila, we have a way forward. No, dialogue can take years and ages. Yeah. I think we underestimate the process of dialogue sometimes. And just saying let's dialogue, it's not an answer or a means to the end. We need these two parties and also the leaders to say, look, these are the issues we are facing. Are we able to negotiate on behalf of these two parties and have them to amicably decide this is the way forward that we are taking? You cannot force conflicting parties to go into a dialogue because there's a whole spectrum of issues that needs to be taken care of before that dialogue actually happens.
Because we all remember the Kofi Annan-led team, right, how long it took.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, people visited several hotels, conferences. Serena was actually the epicenter of all that.
Yeah.
It was a long process.
It is. And so are we ready for that as a country? And now that we're looking at first-hand, right-on solutions, dialogue just takes forever. So do we have the time? That's a question we honestly want to also start discussing. Do we have the time, now that we are saying that the protests are Mondays and Thursdays, do we have a time to start the negotiation process? Do we have time to even put up parameters for the two conflicting parties to come to the table and say, look, these are the issues and these are the possible solutions that we both want? Because it's a matter of interests.
Okay.
And both parties are actually true to say they all are working to the interest of the Kenyans. Yes.
Patience, perhaps somebody would say that people who are urging the two warring parties to have a dialogue, would be like horn blowers. In the ancient days, when you hear somebody blowing a horn, there's a message, something has happened or somewhere. It's a message that is coming, in a subtle way, but they have been sent that, hey, you know what, you have to dialogue. But on the other hand, Raila Odinga says that, you know what, I'm not ready for a dialogue. Dialogue would result into a handshake. The president's team says that we're not going to allow another round of another handshake this time around because they saw what happened in the last regime. So where is Wanjiku left?
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation, really. And again, I will also go from where you're asking yourself, whose interest are we championing for?
Exactly.
Whose interest are we fronting?
Yeah.
Because for me, in my understanding, both camps, and it's a very dangerous place we are in because, as you remember the numbers when we concluded the elections, every person had a whopping 6 million behind them. So if today, Raila assembles the whole 6 million people, who some of them have never moved, are still waiting and to see, well, there'll come a chance. And of course, with the conversations that, you know, this election wasn't fair or wasn't credible, there are people who have completely refused to believe that Raila today is not the president. So there is a team that is completely agitated and completely frustrated, and that team still at this point will, whether there is any interest for Wanjiku or not, they will still be there with frustrations from behind. You know, the way you meet somebody and somebody vents and you wonder what's the problem, but because they have really had many other issues before. So for me, I'll be concerned about whose interest are we really championing for. Is it Wanjiku? And what does Wanjiku want? Wanjiku wants to continue on with their lives. People want to move on with their lives. 6-8 months down the line, we want to see a working Kenya. Is it working? Well, we can see as it is now. Every 2 days in a week, we are saying let's go for demonstrations. It is time lost, it is money lost, it is lives put in a disability.
We have got Wanjiku A and Wanjiku B.
Yeah.
Wanjiku A wants to move on. Elections is over, and now, you know, we have to move on with our lives. But Wanjiku B says no. Now that is the other party who supports Raila Odinga and people who are going to continue picketing. So Wanjiku A and B are two different people. How are we going to balance the, you know, the two people?
Again, we go where we're saying that leaders have to dialogue. If you're really you're really protesting on behalf of, or agitating on behalf of Wanjiku A or Wanjiku B, you have to be there to tell them, listen, this is where we are now. And the question is, again, people feel frustrated because there has been a handshake before. And when it happened, then what you know, people feel like it's really about the political interest and of the leaders. It's really not about us. So there's somebody who is being taken for a ride. And who is being taken for a ride? Is that Wanjiku probably who has no job today and has nothing to lose at the end of it all? I am here, I love Baba, I want to be there and to see, has Baba, I remember yesterday I was at a public place and I had somebody say, kesho hakuna kwenda kazi, Baba amesema, Baba akisema sisi tunatii. But for me, this country is bigger than individuals.
Yes.
It's bigger than, you know, two leaders. We just want to see, can we move on? And you know, the people who suffer most, as we are saying, is Wanjiku. A number of us have really organized ourselves, and because of COVID now we know that we can work from our homes. People, the working class, some of them really don't care much because they're like, you know, my life has to go on. I have bills to pay at the end of the month. This instability messes me up and I have to keep working. So people wake up in the morning and continue, like we came here. It's really a normal working day for other people. But you see, at the end of the time, it affects everyone else. When the country experiences disability, everyone else really gets affected. You know?
Esther, is Wanjiku A and B aware of their rights? You might be aware of Article 37 from the first article to the last in the Constitution, but do you think Wanjiku A and B...
Are they being taken for rights?
Exactly. I mean, today's Monday, another round of protests coming on Thursday. For how many days, we don't know.
Well, in any context of politics, there has to be the aspect of self-interest. There is no politics anywhere in this world played without self-interest. Now, when it comes to Wanjiku, Wanjiku A and B, and you say Wanjiku A and B is who and who? You say Wanjiku A and B is?
The other person who is saying that we need to continue with our lives. Mwingine anasema hapana, hii bado lazima tuendelee na maandamano.
So this Wanjiku A and B we're talking about, right now the country is polarized. So Wanjiku A and B is literally a Kenya Kwanza fanatic, and there is an Azimio fanatic on the other side. And then there is this side of people who are neutral. They say, I don't care, I want to get out of this country, I want to go to the US, I want to go to Australia, I'm tired of this politics. But now Wanjiku A and B are people who are either looking out for their own interests, that's why they're supporting the government, or they are supporting Raila Odinga because I have been a fanatic for Raila for all these years.
Yes.
And you know, I keep on saying that Raila Odinga is lethal. You cannot underrate Raila Odinga because from 1997, when he was joining Moi's government, and then he falls out, he joins Kibaki's government, he falls out, joins Uhuru's government, and now in Ruto's government, he's still the topic of discussion. So that means Ruto got 50.5% of the country's votes. So the other percentage, with the IBC results, the other percentage was supporting the current government. Yeah. So you look at the Wanjiku A and B, and you say, at the end of the day, it's about self-interest. Maybe someone is supporting Raila's Mandamanos because maybe they're gaining something from it. And maybe someone is supporting Kenya Kwanza because they're gaining something from it. So when it comes to the ordinary citizens, there's some people who are really fanatics. You've seen like even religious fanatics who follow their leaders to the latter, and whatever he says they will do.
That is the
so even to me I would say that Wanjiku's interest, yes, is kept at heart by these leaders, but are we sure they're keeping the interest of Wanjiku at heart?
That is the question.
I'm not so sure about that. So at the end of the day, it's about these leaders who are ahead, who are higher on the pyramid, to come together and consolidate their people and tell the people that this is the way forward and this is the way forward, because we cannot be all up there in the hierarchy of power. So the leader comes in to say that, oh, my fans, let us do this. My people, let us do this. Yeah. So that's why I keep on saying that there has to be a way that these two leaders are kept in a room and told, negotiate, because you have people who are following, you have a following, you have a listening. People are listening to you. People will do whatever you want to say. Yeah. So if they can put that at heart, then they will come together and say, okay, fine, let us move on, because yes, there's that percentage of people that does not want to move, does not want to be interested in politics, but they're being affected. And as Christine says, that dialogue is a long process. It has a lot of.
It's not an event.
It's an event. It takes a lot of parties and what. Let us go into it.
Okay,
Victor.
Let me just add as a devil's advocate.
Yeah.
We have got Kenya Kwanza and the other side of Azimio. There are some people in Azimio who does not support the Maandamano. There are some people in Kenya Kwanza who are supporting Maandamano. We are human beings. I mean, some of the politicians who are in Azimio the other day are now in Kenya Kwanza. I mean, it's open. So it's both sides. That's why I'm saying Wanjiku A and Wanjiku B. Yes, Patience.
I wanted to say, I mean, even the people like Wanjiku A, Wanjiku B, and Wanjiku C, the neutral parties.
The decided party.
Yes.
Okay.
Then there's always that kind of a criteria all the time. They're undecided. I wonder why are they agitating? You know, I watch news and I'm like, I remember like 2 to 3 days, I was having a conversation with my sister and I asked, so I've watched news, I've watched KBC, I've watched NTV, I've watched, and people are being interviewed, those who had gone out for Maandamanos. And I listened and I said, even in the messaging, why are we really tunaandamana kwa sababu ya nini? You know, you listen to people being interviewed. Somebody says, I am here because Baba amesema. Others are clear, we are here because we are protesting against the high cost of living.
Yeah.
Others are here, we want to talk as zifunguliwe. So I'm like, okay, so what is the issue really, Kenyans? Why are we here today? So I think for me, we need to really align ourselves first. And that alignment has to be done from the political leaders themselves. Tell us exactly, why do you think it's important for us to be on the ground?
Let me ask you. Then it means that even Kenyans should also be educated on, before you take to the street for Maandamano, you need to be taught.
But Kenyans are educated. Are we assuming that they don't know what they're doing? Look, there are 3 stages to, now that we're talking about promises, deliveries, and
politics.
Yes. There are 3 stages to promises. There's a campaign stage where candidates come to us and tell us, yada, yada, yada are my policy directions, this is what I'll do for you. And as citizens, we sit down and discuss all these issues and we say, okay, I'm going to go for candidate A or B. So Wanjiku actually has a chance to understand the policies or the ideas that this candidate is bringing on the table. And they actually get time to discuss during the campaigns. And you see, as Kenyans, we've been subjected to some suspense where the political parties will take their time before they come and tell us their agenda. And when that happens, we have analysts right, left, and center telling us what the mandates are and what the policies discussions are. And then the second stage is the voting stage, where Wanjiku gets to go to the ballot and actually vote the person whose plan looked like addressed their issues.
Based on the promises during campaign.
Based on the promises during campaign.
Okay.
They have a chance to then decide, I like somebody else's promises compared to the other person. Then lastly, we have the office stage where we are right now. They campaigned, they told us what they are up to, we voted them in, and then now it's the office stage and we are telling them, we want you to make all the promises come true. But then the accountability structure is what we are not even aware of. Because are we putting the institutions that are in place to really scrutinize what their promises said and how far they have come? I have heard a lot of people say, give us time as the government to implement what we said we're going to do. Are we giving them time? Or were there structures in place to say that after a certain period, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would have been done? So when it comes to promises, again, are we giving timelines so that we're able to say, okay, Victor, you told me you're going to buy me bread by day 10. This is day 20, I have no bread. You said you're going to feed my kids. You said you're going to take my children to school. This is day 50, and you said you're going to take my children to school by day 15. Is that the basis of our picketing, or what exactly are we?
And that's why I'm asking the question: is the common? Nyange has put it. We have got Wanjiku A, B, and now we have got C.
Right.
Do they have the civic education to understand? Before you take it to the streets, then you understand what you're picketing about.
Oh yes, Kenyans are very civically aware. We will be doing a disjustice to think that Kenyans are not aware of the Constitution. Okay. And we all look at it from a point it actually speaks to the issues that we face.
Okay, okay.
Well, I blame it on the communication. And as we said, I have been in the political field before. Everything that you promise there has a timeline. So is the government communicating enough to tell us? It's like getting a new job. When you get a new job, there's a process for you to be able to say, you will be very ambitious. You know, you have all these good ideas, all this wishful thinking, this is how it's going to happen. And then you get to the organization, you start learning the people working for that organization. Before that, you want to understand, do I have the budget to do whatever it is that I was promising, or do I not have the budget? And then number 3, you are there wondering, okay, so who are other stakeholders on board? What is the expectations for us? And I'm looking at the same thing with this. We were at a campaign period where we made promises as a government, for example. The opposition also made promises. And those are the promises today. They're saying, well, it's only been, I mean, it's really been only 6 months. Is it 6 months?
6 months.
Yeah, no, maybe more. Probably 7 months now, 8 months, headed to 8 months, because I mean, from August to December is 5 months, and then now we're in March, so 8 months, put it there. In my understanding is the government needed to get in, settle, first understand where we are, and then of course there was the government formation, and that has taken some time. So let's say, who is working? The president can't work in a silo. He has a whole team of people that he needs to work with. Excuse me, you have the PSCs, the cabinet secretary, everyone else has to align, and has to align with what is there in their docket. That takes some time. So I think for me, it's really the government's failure to communicate to people. Wanjiku is lacking direction, and the direction, where is it lacking direction from? From really the leaders. They are not communicating enough to tell us this is where we are, this is the situation. I think talking to people and telling them this is where we are, and this is the reality of the situation. I've come in, well, I had all my ambitions and wish list, but this is going to take some time. I had promised to do this in 3 months. Well, it might not happen in 3 months, but give me another 3 months. I'll be able to be somewhere. There will be some progress. For me, the lack of constant communication to Wanjiku and trickling down. And again, we have different levels of government. We have the county government, we have the national government. Tukenda chini tuko mpaka na, you know, the chief, the area local chief, and everyone. That information needs to trickle down in a very organized manner. When it does that, everyone feels, okay, so we are here, but you've now been promised a new deadline. Initially, it was going to happen in December. It's not happening in December. Now we said it was going to happen in March. It hasn't happened in March. However, the government promises it will happen in June. I think for me, we need to be, we need to ask ourselves questions. Are we impatient, or are we frustrated?
Are we, okay.
Yeah?
Those are 2 big questions. But
yes.
Because Esther, we have got promises, politics, and now deliverables. That, what is now practical?
What is practical is that, you know, when looking at politics, promises, and deliverables, you can make a comparison between the previous regime and the current regime. Now, when it comes to the promises, the previous regime had. When you're looking at the promises made during the campaign period,
yes,
that the promises give you a base or an agenda of selling your points. Look at Make America Great Again. It made Trump sell out to his electorate. The president came with the bottom up, and we all went for, we are going for the bottom up. So the promises during the campaign, whether you can achieve them or not, they sell you out. And the end point of any politician is to win an election. That is the end point of any politician. No politician goes into politics and says that I want to lose this election. So if it takes lying, if it takes selling your truth, if it takes whatever it takes, you have to win the election. Now, you have to realize that every sitting president tends to do better than the previous president, because they build up on what the former president had left. Now, for example, the continuation of the universal healthcare project, affordable housing, and the education, scrapping of the exam education, Ruto will build up on what Uhuru left. And now, when it comes to deliverables,
and the practicality, because some of these promises will go until, you clock 5 years, get re-elected, 10 years, with none of them, actually one or two, getting delivered.
Well, practically, yourself, have you achieved everything that you said I want to achieve at this time? It is not possible. So a manifesto will give a roadmap of what I want to achieve. But now, looking at the practicality, they say kwa ground between different, because Ruto will come into power and say, I will lower the cost of electricity, I am going to lower the cost of unga, I am going to lower the lower the cost of fuel, I am going to employ more doctors. But now, when he gets into office, there's a reality that he has to face. There's, as she said, there's the transition. The transition period has taken a whole 8 months. Well, they're still taking. It's a government of willing. We are going to do this. We're going to do this. Before the previous promises are achieved, he's promising others, I'm going to lower the price of gas, when the others have not been achieved. So it takes a process, and I would say that we should give the government more time, because government running is technical. And someone said that if your employer employs you today and gives you 6 months into office, and after those 6 months he does not see your performance, what is he going to do?
I think I'd want to...
Okay, before we take a break, yes.
Yeah, say that it's different. You can honestly not compare a job description where you're told what to do and a political situation where you tell what you're going to do, but then there are procedures of how you're supposed to do that. You can't run a government the way you'd run something that has no structure. We are not there as Kenyans. And looking at this, just also going back to the issue of Wanjiku, I think Wanjiku for the longest time has been taken as a social welfare issue. So we need to do that because, Wanjiku need a road, because they need to sell their skuma and whatnot. But Wanjiku is asking for transformation. Because these are the issues we've been facing all through. They know the issues. But then are we saying we're moving from point A to point B? That is what Wanjiku is asking. In terms of progress.
Yes.
And not being seen as a problem, not being seen as woshe, akiwoshe, Akiwoshe, you know?
Let's take a break.
It's just sad.
Akiwoshe, Christine.
Let's take a break.
Akiwoshe, Christine, let's take a break. Let's take a break. And part of the promises, and now that's going to affect almost everyone, the cost of power, starting next month, 16%, 19%, 17%. Part of the promises that we're talking about, promises, deliverables, and politics.
We took
Exactly.
We took a groundly difference.
And Patience is a politician, and you contested for a seat. You know this firsthand. Let's take a break. Akiwoshe, let's take a break. You will tell us. Okay, shortly after this. Stay with us. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Today we are talking about politics, promises, and deliverables. What are practically possible to be delivered at the end of a political cycle? So let me come back to you, Woshe, Christine. You finished, then you toss it over to Patience. You're making a point.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So we need to move from that social welfare situation. I think we've done well as a country. You cannot compare a country like Kenya with even some of our neighbors, you know. So let's move from that transition. That is what Wanjiku actually wants. We now have good roads. I mean, you and I have been enjoying the expressway. You know, that is something that Wanjiku wants, because then it has hastened a lot of the businesses. Now you can't be stuck in traffic because there's a road that you can use, and with a few coins you're able to transact, and life continues. And so this social welfare issue, it's also the thing that is making a lot of problems within our youth. You're still seen as a problem to be solved. You're not seen essentially as a partner in the solution-making processes. And so we need to start transformation agendas and not look at it from a social welfare.
Okay, Patience, when you make promises during political campaigns, you know, you have your agenda 10, 5, 6, 7, or even points to sell out to the common mwananchi during political campaigns. That starts with the promises, and then now you go to the politics, and then now go to the deliverables. What is left for common mwananchi, as you put it, Wanjiku A, B, and C? What is now left for the three people to pick?
Well, your word is your bond. You're as good as your promises. And you know, for me, I mean, my first frustration with the Kenya Kwanza government was the 50-50 promise on women. When we said we've signed a charter, and a number of us backed on that charter and said, well, finally we have a government that is going to give us 50-50. And then it started with the cabinet secretary positions. And there we were, okay, this is not the truth. The truth picture as we thought. This is not what we voted for. And I mean, the women rights movements came out defending that and saying, Mr. President, you lied to us. And we are here and waiting. And then we waited and went to the public secretary, principal secretary positions. And there we go again. There was no 50-50 there. And recently, we have been subjected to another not 50-50 at all, not even close to 50-50, the CSS positions. So I think for me is the promises are good. Think through them. If you sign a promise, it's the Wanjiku wants to really believe that, you know, I can hold you accountable. I can believe in what you say. And that's why I'm giving you my vote, because whatever you promise me, I have a decision to choose Victor or choose Esther or choose Patience. And then they decide finally, oh, I fail your promises. Speak to my needs. Wanjiku wants to thrive, wants to barely survive and make ends meet. And that's why we're saying, we all need choices. As long as you can make everyone happy in one way or another, as she gave a very good example of the expressway, now you have a choice. If you don't have the 300 shillings, well, the road is there for you. But if you have the 300 shillings, you go into the airport, use the expressway. You have more other things that you can really think through, but everyone else lives peacefully in the same, you know, situation. So for me, I'm thinking about these promises are promises that we're holding the government accountable. In our agitation and in our frustrations, well, we have a choice to keep demonstrating, to picket, but let's do it unarmed. And in my thinking is everyone else is thinking about their future. And as you think about the future, my child who is 1 year today, for example, in 5 years, they will be 6. If I am 30 today, in 5 years, I'll be 35. I'm looking at this government helping me transit through my stages in life, family-wise, career-wise. All these things depend on the promises that you make to me. So for me, I think the government needs to really rethink their strategy in terms of not just ad hoc situations. Noise distracts. So even as we continue picketing every day and we continue saying, you know, 2 days in a week, what is the cost implication of that? What is the financial implication of that? How many people now can't go to work because of XYZ? How many people have to keep their cars away? Uber drivers, for example. Matatu people who are scared about the, you know, my car is going to be out there. I don't know whether it's going to come back in the evening. That has a, let's think through what kind of Kenya do we want?
Okay. So noise distracts. Let me pick it from there. So we have got the opposition, Mandamano, Monday and Thursday, and the president also, you know, waking up every morning, getting the brief. He wants to run the government. Do you think he's getting distracted by the noise?
Of course he's getting distracted. He's getting distracted.
And to what extent?
He is getting very distracted. I'm sure the president right now is a very stressed person. Rigathi Gachagua does not sleep at night. Sometimes you see him coming out, he has eye puffs, he cannot sleep, he is speaking, maybe it's the frustration. And you know, promises are good. Promises are ambitious. Promises are attractive. They are glad. They are that fruit you want to pick from the tree, the ripest fruit, you see? Now, after the promises comes to the reality, like we said, at things on the ground are different. Kwa ground vitu ni different. Now, the president, looking at Uhuru's regime, we can say he faced the same problems. He faced the problems of the high cost of living. He faced problems with unemployment in the country, corruption, the opposition, the destruction from the opposition. But we have to give it to Uhuru Kenyatta. He made sure that the universal health care was successful. There was affordable housing. There was the expressway. There's the SGR. There's the power, electricity connection. And as much as it's not perfect to 100%, but we have to give it to him. Now, when it comes to this regime that we have right now, like I said at the beginning, the president is a symbol of national unity, and that is one of his responsibilities. He has to find a way in which he's going to curb this distraction so that he can focus on the economy and delivering to the people. There is no way the president is going to deliver to the people when there are these distractions. Last Monday, Rigathi Gachagua gave a report saying that the country had lost 2 billion Kenyan shillings. I'm sure there's some investors somewhere in South Korea, in China, in India. They wanted to come to Kenya, and they said, no, we cannot come to Kenya today. And they were coming to invest. So there is no way, as much as we say that this one has his own interest, the president is not going to work with all these distractions. And he needs to find it as his responsibility to find a way to curb these mandamanos and the distractions.
You know what, Christian, because at the end of the day, when promises are made and politics is going around, we have got a point where we are going to say, fine, we have got the 3 positions here. You politic a lot, you give me all the promises, but then now let me wait and see. I gave you my vote. So please, can you deliver? At what point will the politician start to differentiate the 3 and give the voter what the voter decides or wanted?
Well, we have terms when these politicians have in office. And so if you know your term is 5 years, then you would be playing on the job if you start implementing your promises on the 4th year, because you're on your way out.
Yes.
But then we have been accustomed to the fact that people already know that they have a sure bet for the next term. And so they wait until the next term to start delivering on their promises. So that's also another issue that we also need to discuss. However, again, just looking at the macro level of the politics where the politicians come and say, this is what I'll do for you. From a macro and micro level, at the micro level, we also have the citizen who is supposed to take the responsibility to help actualize this plan. Have we also just gone back to the drawing table and say, cool, this was the plan. What has been my responsibility to make sure that that happens? Because then we are easy to go to the ground and start picketing. However, have we also looked inside ourselves and see our responsibilities towards actualizing that promise? Because a promise is as good on paper until it is actualized. And then what is our responsibility as citizens when it comes to actualizing that process? My 2 panelists here, colleagues, would be, I think, kind enough to share that they act in a manner that is informed because they take responsibility to get information and to also know what's in the Constitution. So we cannot always be pointing fingers. We also need, as a country, to look at our responsibilities as citizens. I once attended a meeting in UK, and I remember this young person saying, why is the meeting starting late? Because I am here on taxpayer money. And every second that passes counts to that taxpayer money, because I also have to take a flight back home. How many of us actually sit in rooms and say, I am here on taxpayer money, and every time lost is a loss to the citizens who paid dearly for that amount of money? And so when you talk about taxes, when you talk about these issues, are we paying our taxes? Now the government has its own agenda, the bottom-up transformational agenda, beta. what is our responsibilities as citizens to actualize that?
Okay.
Because sometimes as a leader, you can also do as much as tell people, this is where I want to be. And we buy into that idea. So how then do we also fall in that plan? And now we're actually taking the responsibilities to go to the roads and say, this has not been done. But then are we also asking ourselves what our responsibility has been to that effect?
Let me ask you this question, and this is to all of you ladies, because at the end of the day, for example, let me just take this issue of the cost of power. The president promised that the cost of power was going to drop. What we have is that high power cost will shock consumers. During his political campaigns, we did that story here over and over, and that was actually part of his clarion call. But what we have right now is the high cost of power starting next month. At what point is the Wanjiku A, B, and C will have a common sit down with the promise makers and say, you know what, we can't continue like this. You promised me a guava and you're giving me a mango. I'm allergic to a mango. I need a guava. What's the voice? Where is the voice of the common mwananchi now? Because when you face this, 6-7 months later, patients, this is what we are faced with. So where is Wanjiku A, B, and C?
Yeah. Well, I think we are frustrated, I would say, as Kenyans, on behalf of all Kenyans. And I think it's not just at the national level, even at the county levels. I look at my county and I see, various WhatsApp groups, and everyone is talking about, where is our governor? He promised this, nothing is happening. Did we make a mistake? And a lot of people saying, oh, I think we made a mistake by not choosing patients. Maybe we will have moved. But you see, maybe it would have been the same thing. It would have taken me a time to get, acquainted to what is happening, to start. And that's why I'm looking at what are the quick wins, what are the quick gains, how can we move to give so that we can build some trust with Mwananchi, so that we can start with them by telling them this is where. And for me, I believe this place of communication, that where many people really ignore communication, is really the backbone of everything. Communicate and constantly communicate and tell people this is where we are, because in their frustrations, they're easily, they will easily, Wanjiku will easily say, today I'm going to andamana kabisa, I am tired, But why are you tired? Why are you out there? And that's what I'm saying, even the messaging is wrong, because you hear somebody say, minataka tufungue server sasa. Okay, well, is that your frustration? The other person says, sorry, what will that solve at this point? The other person goes, high cost of living. The other person goes, to me, steam, I don't care, wakiongeza steam, but I'm like, power moves everything, So the high cost of power affects everyone, whether you have electricity in your house or not. It's not just the simple understanding that it's electricity. And I think for me, we have a responsibility as citizens, as Kenyans. We have to open engagement forums. Let's continue in our spaces. So, for example, where I sit in, as I said, I represent the Association of Media Women in Kenya. And in our small meetings, let's have a civic engagement space where we can easily interrogate, because at that point we come in as an informed people. We can easily say, whatever it is that we're discussing here, now let's unpackage it to Mwananchi. Let's write our stories that explain where we are as a country. Let's have constant engagement and open forums of dialogue. Secondly, let's continue to interrogate the promises that were given to us. Where are we at? We were told 50-50. How does that affect us? If we voted for 50-50, we didn't get that.
So how do we do that then as Kenyans?
Well, that's
what the question.
That's what I'm saying for me as Kenyans is we need to, I like when people are frustrated. I like angry people. Angry people move. We must be angry enough all the time. But in our anger, let's also really exercise our responsibility. Let's say we understand that we have rights, and in our rights comes responsibility. So let's ensure that those who have an opportunity to communicate, like you, who has a space here, make this conversation, constant conversation. Sustain the conversation. Don't make it an event. That today we're done with mandamanos, then that's it. Let's wait until the next thing, the big thing happens. There are people who are saying, there's an Wanjiku A who is completely saying, I don't want this mandamanos. There's Wanjiku B who says, I want mandamanos. I am ready to be there. There's Wanjiku C who says, I am completely neutral. I don't care. I'm going to be in my house and work from my house. So let's accommodate everyone. And as you accommodate everyone, let's open avenues for communication. Let's open avenues for constant engagement. Put everyone informed. The local leaders at the village, nyumba kumi, wacha watu waelewe kwamba hakuna maji kwa sasa kwa sababu ya XYZ. Let also the county government open channels of communication that trickles down and communicate on behalf of the national government. When there is frustration that money has delayed and everyone else feels, huyu gavana bure kabisa. But a communicate is because I'm not able to do this at this point because it's really money that hasn't come my way, and I have to be able to do this because of I need funding to be able to do this and this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps you're still reading from the old book, you know, from independence, we came into the Kenyatta regime, the Moise regime, the Kibakis, and now somebody says Kenyatta B, Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, and now we have got President Ruto's regime. The old book, we still go back to the shelf, bring it, dust it, and they say, this is the same old book, you're going to read these are the manuals and the old book. The common mwananchi will be given promises, but do we really need to wait until politicians give us the promises? Yet they know they're not going to deliver. They will sell what is feasibly quite possible and what is quite close to our hearts. Electricity, barabara, healthcare, maji, education, and etc. etc. The same issue. That's what I'm talking about. The same old book. We bring it, we read it, and say, okay, sawa, patience, very good, Esther. There we go. Where are we going to force politicians to have political hygiene, Esther?
Can you repeat the question? Can you reframe the question, please?
We need politicians to give political hygiene so that at the end of the day, whenever they campaign, they give us what is possibly, you know, to be delivered. Talk about health. In some sub-counties across the country.
Is that possible in Kenya?
Is that possible? That's the question. Possible? In Taita Taveta, for example, not Taita Taveta, in Kilifi County, when I had governor here, governor said, in all the hospitals, they have an overflow. In fact, they even asking themselves, watapeleka madawa wapi? Because they have an overflow and excess in the hospitals. That is what common mwananchi wants. That you have an excess, but utapeleka wapi? So we need an abundance of
everything.
Kama ni maji, each and every position, kila boma utakuwa na maji. But is it even possible?
You know, looking at the politics of Kenya is quite different, because even the public seems like they want to be lied to.
Yeah, they're okay with that.
I can tell you that if there's an honest person who came and gave his manifesto and told them that I'm not going to lower the cost of electricity in 1 year, but in 3 years this is where we are going to be. That's during a campaign. In 1.5 years, this is where we are going to be. People will not be appeased to that. People will move to the one who has quick solutions. In 2 months' time, I'm going to do this. In 1 month time, I'm going to do this. So also the public is also not ready for change. I can say that. Because if you look at people like Ole Kiapi and Ekuru Okot, I looked at their manifestos and I saw, oh, they are quite appeasing, they are realistic, but who are people going for? They're going for other people because they're voting in terms of tribe, they're voting in terms of maybe popularity, or because of or so many other factors. So when it comes to giving people that truth during the campaigns, you cannot win an election in Kenya. And like I said, the purpose of every politician is to win an election. So if I come today and say I want to vie for presidency, and I give a realistic blueprint, no one is going to buy it. But now I have to...
So you have to lie.
You have to lie.
I think just because we've not had
you have to lie. That is the reality.
Ascertain that will happen. I mean, because let's take a case in point. Yourself as a person.
And that
right?
now actually, it tells the kind of a society we are in.
That is the reality we are facing.
Okay.
Come on, look at Kenya. That is the reality we are facing. You go to your people, you vied somewhere.
Yes, in Taita Taveta County.
In Taita Taveta County.
And I had a very realistic manifesto.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
But now people want
There's no politician who say you lied to them.
About communication.
No, for me, mine...
The sender and the receiver.
Yes, I wanted to engage. And I tried to explain to people, but I mean, all of them would wonder, because they're not used to the kind of language I'm talking to them.
Because you're speaking the truth.
I'm speaking the truth and I'm telling them something different.
And they're not ready for that.
And they're not
so
ready
that
for
goes where she said.
Yes, that's when I completely agree. Not on the part of lying. Politicians do that. I really wanted to be a very trustworthy political leader. And I tried to engage and I said, we have been here before. And that's why you see people constantly continue electing the same people, because familiarity for them, I mean, they will easily tell me, but why would you come na sisi? But I could be bringing something different that has not been there before. Why don't you want to give new people a chance? You see, but that difference, that's exactly what we're saying. The electorate are not ready for change. They're so accustomed to, they have completely resigned to fate. This is our way of life. Even though sisi uishi. And if you have a problem, as we don't have a problem, we're okay with this. And the politicians have actually mastered that at an understanding that keep them poor, so we find them cheap when we come back another 5 years. So you constantly want to make them so dependent, and that's why you see during election
so vulnerable.
Exactly. And it's about how much are you giving me today? And I try to reason with them. We are 13 gubernatorial candidates in Taita Taveta County. If every one of us comes and give you 100, 100, 100, at the end of the time, how do you make a decision? I mean, for me, it beats logic completely, because every candidate has an opponent, and there are maybe 1 or 2, 3 people. But at that time, every time is we don't see you. All we want is easy to say, if we can't get, like 100 shillings from you or 200 or whatever it is, and it's so cheaper money, 100 shillings, 50 shillings or 100, we might not see you another 5 years. But I'm promising I will be here with you.
Okay.
I might not have the 100 shillings today, but I'm promising the change. And the change will sustain you beyond the 50 shillings that you're looking for. And maybe make you actually get 1,000 bob rather than the 50 shillings I will give you. The electorate is not ready for change.
The electorate is not ready for change. You picked that meat from Christine's mouth. Christine, you can chew what is remaining.
I think at the end of the, just going back to that communication strategy, there's the sender of that communication and there's the receiver. So I think what she's also trying to say is the receiver sometimes is ill-informed and acts on a bias that the sender has no receiver's best interest at heart. Because even when you're doing your promises, are you able to really tackle the issues that the Wanjiku on the ground actually want?
Yes.
Because sometimes we bring issues that are very foreign to the people we want to serve. And that has been an experience we have seen. There's a good story told about, especially in I think the coast, where some NGO thought that constructing toilets would solve an issue. When then the toilets were done, nobody used the toilets because the locals were not engaged in just understanding what really is the issue. And sometimes that then makes it very hard for people to even own to some of these promises. Then that becomes a challenge between now the leader and the community, because you're acting from a vacuum.
Well, for me it's different.
The realities are very different.
For me it's different because they actually conducted the research and really tried to really ensure that in all the constituencies, we have 4 constituencies, Motate, Voi, Taveta, and Mundanyi. And in all of them, we really went to see what are the issues affecting this, because each sub-county is different and unique in its own setting. So what are the issues? Well, we have all the underlying issues, but then again, we also have issues that are unique to each of the constituencies. But in the same manner, it's, well, we have been lied before. Yes, you're really promising. Oh, yes, but then the issues, and I listened to one, you're too young for this seat. And I'm like, oh, come on.
You see, Victor, when I say, because I'm going to be quoted somewhere and saying you said politicians have to lie. Sometimes it does not come to, it does not come, but they know it's the truth. It does not come to you give a blatant lie and come and say, I'm going. No, it's not that kind of lie.
Perhaps they've just mastered the art.
It's the packaging. It's the packaging. Because to me, an ordinary Mwananchi and any other, you say that the cost of electricity in January 2023, the president said that the cost of electricity is going to be lowered. But now, right now, the cost of electricity is going higher.
Now.
You remember during his campaign, the president said that no one has to be charged for using a road. And then the transport minister comes to say that we're going to put tolls on highways. So he comes to, during his campaign, he said that the Hustler Fund is going to be interest-free. And now, in reality, it's not interest-free. So how do we call that?
We call for a break. We'll be right back. Director said that we should we call that a break. Let's come shortly. We'll be coming for our round of our last discussion here. Wow, what an interesting discussion here. More when we come back from this break shortly. right, welcome back. Today is Ladies Monday. We're coming to the final close of this discussion today. We're talking about promises, politics, and deliverables. So, ladies, I'm going to take your last round of, your final thoughts on this one. Starting with you, Esther. Perhaps a common mwananchi, today we are giving them names. Wanjiku A, Wanjiku B, and Wanjiku C. We need to have political hygiene. Where does the three Wanjikus and the politician meet?
Now, according to Harold Laswell, he says politics is who gets what, where, and how. And I remember my lecturer told me that politics is everywhere. Politics is in the kitchen. Politics is where we are seated here right now. You play politics in every place, and what matters is the levels of politicking in government level, individual level, family level. So to get to a good political hygiene, it has to start with the culture that we are building up in our society. How are we dealing with corruption at individual level? How are we dealing with corruption in our houses? They say if you tell a kid that clean this place and I will give you 50 shillings, are you training this kid to always expect something to expect something he's obliged to? Now this kid will grow up and say, and the politician will tell them, I give you this money and you vote for me, and the culture goes on and on. So we have to clear our society, mold our children to better standards of living and ethics, instill ethics into them, and also looking at the lot of the leaders we have, we should pick up leaders who are out to mentor young people, leaders who are out to give people direction and look at it in a long-term manner, that I'm here today and in 10 years I won't be here. What impact am I leaving? So we can start mentoring young people, creating associations, mentorship groups, so that good leaders are mentored, so that we are not having the same situation. We are not passing on the culture from corruption. We are not passing on the culture of dirty politics, of money-based. We're passing value-based politics to our generations. So my point is that we just need to get our culture and society in place for the politics to flow in. Yeah, because where I come from, they say it's called gonya. Gonya ni ile kwanza mnapanga line, mheshimiwa wewe umeanguka, nini nipatie 50 ndani. After that, we'll vote for somebody else. Perhaps I should even change and vote for patients. Okay.
Thank you.
I think this calls for a resocialization.
Yes.
We've been used to, when you talk about hygiene, I quickly think about health. We've been accustomed to curative processes and not preventive processes. So it needs a resocialization of some sort to ensure that we remove some of the biases that we have already had from the previous promises that have been given, and dispensations for that matter. It also calls for us really looking at the norms that we have been accustomed to. And finding the institutions that have been addressing these norms, and how then do we start changing these norms to serve us as a people. Because we sometimes give politicians a lot of power and forget that we actually have that power. And at the end of the day, we also need a financial muscle to make sure that even within the grassroots, they're able to implement some of these processes. Like I said before, there are 3 stages: the campaign stage, the voting stage, and the
office stage now.
The office stage. Now we are at the office stage. And you realize, as a voter, we voted in these promises. And so we took the responsibility to say, I align with candidate A and not candidate B. But now, candidate B is also putting pressure to make sure that candidate A is also able to do what he said he would do. So then, in the office stage, let's look at the norms There is socialization, which hygiene is the candidate who promised us, presenting to us, because hygiene can be good and bad.
Yeah.
So are we looking more into the good hygiene and saying, okay, this has been good, but we want it to be better? Are we looking at the bad hygiene and saying, this is bad, and now it's becoming worse?
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Patience, political hygiene, where do we have that equilibrium point? The common mwananchi and the politician. So that at the end of the day, we do not have these mandamanos to, well, solve our problems as a nation.
Is this our last break?
All right, yeah, go ahead, yes.
Oh, yeah, it's because, you know, my members are watching AMWIK and they had promised them the Tuma Salamu.
Go ahead.
So
Tuma Salamu. Tuma Salamu.
The Tuma Salamu kwa members wote wa AMWIK.
Yes.
Yeah, I had promised them, please watch, I will be sending greetings. So I've just reminded, if this is the last break, please let me take this opportunity and also send salamus to all my electorate in Taita Taveta County. Well, I'm very honored to be here. And so when you talk about political hygiene, in my understanding, everyone has to come to the table with clean hands. You know, the politician has to really be honest in their promises, to say this is what I can deliver, and realistic in their promises, clean with, you know, timelines. This is putting every matter constant, reality core ground whatsoever. At the end of my 5 years, I will deliver X, Y, Z. I will do this. And now you, it's as a politician, it's your duty to see how you can keep to those promises. On the other side, mwananchi also has to come to the table with clean hands. Yeah. It's not a matter of when political times, it's not your time for you to eat. It's not your time for you to say who gives me the biggest share. But you have 5 years to keep them, to keep politicians in check, to make them accountable for every promise that they made. So we must not resign to fate. We must constantly be knowing that this is our country, this is our county, we must defend it, and defend it for the generations behind us, because we will all be judged for having been there and not done something, or not speaking up when you needed to speak up. So I think everyone needs to really remember that we have 5 years. In my county, we keep reminding people all the time, Aturudishi Governor, you know, you serve your 5 years time, you haven't done what it is that you promised, kwaheri, kanyaga pakubwa ukienda, we will give another chance to somebody else. So I think in the same manner, that's what the Constitution grants us. An opportunity for us to say no to bad leadership, no to unfulfilled promises. So come to the board knowing that I'm going to promise 3 things which I can deliver, rather than promise 10 things that they look very beautiful outside there.
You won't end up delivering or just one.
You know?
Yeah.
So be realistic in your promises, 1 or 2 things, promise them, and really make that your agenda. And I think if we do that, all of us, maybe our frustration levels might come down in one way or another, and live peacefully in a country that we all desire and are proud of.
Tuma Salamu to members of Taita Taveta and AMWIK. As we close.
Yeah, asante sana for everyone who's watched here. I think my plea is to say let's not resign to fate. Na salamu zangu nazidi kutuma kwa kila moja aliyechukua muda wake kutuangalia ama kushirikiana nasi tangu tuanze hadi mwisho. Asante sana nawe pia kwa kutupatia fursa hii.
Daughter of the land, from where you come from, Salamu is a must.
Yes.
It's a must. So the justice, I mean, how?
Well, for me, it's to really say hi to every Kenyan and say, this is our country. Yeah. We can go elsewhere, but this is home. East or West, home is always best. So let's be peaceful. If we're going to picket, let's do it in a civilized manner. The way we come together to help each other in Harambee. This is also another time that called us for a different kind of Harambee. We are agitating for issues that we want to be addressed. It's not in form of the WhatsApp groups where we are raising money, but we are raising our issues and addressing these frustrations. So let's come together in a peaceful manner. All the young people who really want to join these demonstrations, let's do it peacefully. Because remember, at the end of the day, is your health taken care of? Do you have an ambulance on standby to rush you to hospital if by any chance that stone lands on you? So let's also look at some of the issues that we need to be addressed and how we can also take care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Kenya is only the country that we all have.
And you also talked about change of our culture.
Change of our culture, and to also our leaders. I would like to urge our leaders to also take their part in creating a conducive environment for politics. And you see, Kenyans have taken a step to show that they're ready. So in some parts of Kenya, they've taken a step to show that they're ready for change. We've had candidates who have been voted in with no money. We've had candidates who have been voted in just because of their agendas, and they did not look at their tribes. We've had people who have gone into power with independent parties. So there is a part that is progressing, and now the leaders who get there because of that, they should take their part in now instilling more discipline into their officers and passing down to their people. And also other leaders should take their part in looking at their interest and ask themselves, what sent me here? And to all patriotic Kenyans,
about culture,
about
and
culture,
discipline.
Yes.
Ladies, thank you so much. We've done our part. We've built our nation. So yes, it's almost 9. So we've done our part. What have you done as a nation? Thank you so much, Esther Nyonje, who is a political analyst and a governance expert, as well as Odera, who is a youth policy, peace and security expert, as well as Patience Nyange, who is the executive director of AMWIK. She's also a journalist by profession. You are not going to take my position. I refuse. I refuse. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. We are wrapping it up there, but stick around because Doreen Arangi is coming up next with an amazing discussion. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Victor Oloo. Have a good morning. Bye-bye.